1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Test, Dorsey's original mic. Test Dorsey's original mic. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
That has been absolute magic most of the time in qualifying.
Jumping up into the third spot now, Duran Bleekemolen in car number 33, that Dodge Viper SRT 150.642. Making the board move right behind him, the Ferrari 458 Italia, car 63 for Alessandro Balzan, holding on to the fourth spot for Scuderia Corsa in GTD.
And the good news is the number 94 Northwest Turner BMW Z4 is on track. So they were able to get that car hauled back into the paddock, get it fixed, and get it right back out here for this session. So great work by that Turner Motorsports crew. Watching things now, and Damian Faulkner in the number 81, that's the GB Autosport entry, the Tully's Coffee Machine, jumps to second, but only for a minute, as Spencer Pumpelly now at a 1:49.974 in that number 45 Audi R8 LMS from Flying Lizard jumps to second, and the Balzan Westfall car, that's the Scuderia Corsa car with Andrew Balsan jumps to third. Von Moltke now a great lap, moves up into fourth, joining his teammate Pompelli in the top 5, and Faulkner, who briefly was second, suddenly sits in the 5th spot in that number 81 Porsche.
They have already eclipsed the lap speed and time that they ran in the final practice session just moments ago, with Andy Lally's time in the 149.6 second bracket. The quickest time in final practice went to that Lally car, but it was only 150.4, so just about a second quicker than what he was able to do in practice in that Porsche 911.
Yeah, they are absolutely hooked up right now. We knew there was more left. I mean, the best time we'd seen was a 49.9, and you knew that there were going to be cars getting underneath that. We're already 3/10 clear of that, and a couple of cars are in the 149 bracket, and we've got some time left, and we've got certainly a couple more laps left on these Continental tires where you can really put together a lap. It's going to be interesting. And you see, you know, you're watching right now, that is Spencer Pompelli, and he's got Andy Lally's Flexbox Magnus car right in front of him. That's the carrot, that's the inspiration, and all, you know, he's thinking, just keep gaining on it, keep gaining on him, and we'll see what happens here. There too is that number 27 for Dempsey. We'll see what plays out there. Behind the wheel is Andrew Davis.
Oh, one car actually dipped the wheels off course just coming out of turn number 9 and headed to turn 10, was able to keep it together. Was one of the Porsche cars that went off course at that end of the racetrack.
All right, they're coming by, and Pompelli now at a 149.665. And that's, oh, not for long. Andy Lally, the number 44, goes through at a 149.371 and goes back on top after Pompelli nabbed it by a few 1,000ths. Lally reclaims it again by about 3/10. That's a phenomenal lap.
Well, you remember that car that dipped the wheels in the dirt? Guess which one it was? Andy Lally. He did it coming off at turn number 9, and guess what? Coming off turn number 11, I looked up, I said, whoa, look at that. He almost caught the outside wall there. Andy Lally hanging it out in that number 44, now headed into the bus stop, nice and smooth through the rumble strips, cuts a perfect line through there, and you can just visually see the speed that he has on that end of the speedway.
But he's lost the pole. We have our first 1:48 lap. Lee Keen in the Alex Job Racing WeatherTech Porsche has turned a 1:48.831, Joe, and gone to the top, and that right now is by over half a second. Wow, an unbelievable lap by Lee Keen. What you were talking about for Andy Lally, that's called running 11/10.
Keen is moving
around
this racetrack, and Lally will try to score a lap here. They're about half a lap apart physically on the racetrack, and so Lally is aware of that number and is working down through turn number 8 now to try to pick up some position, but you can see it on the stream there, the 22 now easing its way around Leah Keen. What a run in that WeatherTech Porsche.
Yeah, you got to think, you know, now he's backed off, he's just tootling around, and, you know, that's sort of a psychological bam. All right, do something with that, guys. And we're going to see if anybody's up to the challenge. Nice to see Dane Cameron, after that problem late in that practice session in the 94 Northwest BMW, to sit right now in the top 4 at a 149.7. Great run there. And Spencer Pompelli has gone to a 149.2, again about a 10th underneath Lally, and Lally's going to be coming across the line shortly. We'll see whether he is able to do anything about that. Townsend Bell, by the way, in the number 555 Revo AIM Autosport Ferrari now sits in the 5th spot.
So as they run, it is Alex Job Racing number 1, Flying Lizard Motorsports number 2, and Magnus Racing now number 3 with Andy Lally. Trying to see if he could better the time, but he has since brought that car down the pit lane as the 44 car with less than 5 minutes remaining.
Yeah, the problem, their stall is right between 2 prototypes, and so he's just come in at a weird angle, and they've got tires ready just in case he wants to try and do something, but it's going to be tough for them to do any work on the car anyway. And there is a look at Dane Cameron in that Motul machine, and he just jumped up to second while we were watching Lally's car when he's snuck by the front straight at a 149 flat, folks, in that number 94 BMW Z4.
And Cameron is on a lap because he's got time, only 2/10 of a second, actually less, separate first and second based on that last run that Dane Cameron did. Leah Keen at a 148.8 Dane Cameron at a 1:49.0. So you do the math on that with a couple of spare change on the end of those lap times, but Cameron still hustling that BMW Z4 around this racetrack, still has another opportunity. He's working down into the boot right now. Meanwhile, the Flying Lizard car coming back around with Spencer Pumpelly behind the wheel, trying to improve upon their position, which has now been bumped down to 4th.
I think Spencer is just starting a lap. As he came through the boot, he was off throttle and was just cooling down those Continentals, gathering everything back up. And now, as he started to come into 10 and at the exit at 10, was on it and on it aggressively as he wants to start a flyer, but he wanted to cool those tires down at this point. Jerome Bleekemolen jumps to 3rd in that Viper exchange. Viper, that's the GT3R, the Dodge Viper SRT machine at a 1:49.217. That pushes Pumpelly back to 4th and Andy Lally to 5th.
Here comes Dane Cameron across. I think he might have gotten held up between turns 9 and 10, which might impact his lap here a little bit, and he eases it down on through 1:50.7. And so that little good run that he had going there all went to spoil, as between 9 and 10 he had to bypass another car, did not get a clean lap, and that's going to hurt Dane Cameron's chances at winning the pole here this afternoon.
Well, it's interesting as Jerome Bleekemolen over the years has been the pole meister in the GT Challenge category in the American Le Mans Series, but he was driving Porsches a lot of the time. And of course, he's a former Porsche Michelin Super Cup champion and Carrera Cup champion, knows the stuff, and made the switch to the Viper here. And you know, they've been developing that a little bit. Last couple of races that they've run, that Viper has been right in the hunt, and it's, you know, they were set back by that huge fire that they had at Sebring, so it really parked the program a little bit. But Bleekemolen has got otherworldly talent, and here he comes. He was sitting in 3rd at a 49.2. He turns a 49.1. That's not enough. He didn't dip into the 48s, but what still a great lap by Bleekemolen. Maybe there's more to come. And here comes Spencer Pumpelly, currently 4th at a 49.2. Did he find some magic once again? Nope, a 150.8, so wasn't able to muster quite enough. As we are down now to coming up on 2 minutes.
Now Dane Cameron is still on one more circuit around to see if he can pick up anything. Looks like he's easing it through and turn 9 into turn number 10 in that Turner Motorsport BMW.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think, yep, and he's going to make the move into the pit lane. And considering where they were at the end of that practice session right before that, right now to be finding themselves up in that top 5 is going to be great. And if it holds for that 2nd spot, that's going to be simply brilliant. The thing is, this guy named Bleekemolen is still looking like he's up on the wheel just a little bit here.
And the 22 of Leah Keen is now back on track as well, kind of working it easily down into the S's, into that first right-hander, and starting to climb the hill. 30 seconds remaining in our opening qualifying session.
Yeah, I think he's been staying out just in case. You know, as soon as you saw Cameron get that close to his time, you know, he was going to stay out, keep a little heat in those tires in case he had to really throw one down. At this point, we'll see whether he completes this lap when time runs out. We're coming up on 5 seconds left in this session. Here comes Bleekemolen, and Bleekemolen coming to the line. A 149.119 was his best. Does he improve on it? A 149.2. Nice, so missed it by that much, as you would say. And I would think at that point then we're probably going to see Lee Keen say, well, we got Spencer Pumpelly, excuse me, that's the 35 car of Dian van Molke. That's the team car, the PR Newswire entry, who quietly has worked that car up into 6th. And this is his last chance to move it up into the top 5. See if he's able to do that here. Currently held by Andy Lally, the 5th spot on that car. Let's see what he's able to do. And no, he doesn't. Turns his 49.7, yeah, not quite a 49.9, so he missed it by a couple of tenths. And so right now, I think Lee Keen's got this. I don't know of anybody else on the track that really has a realistic chance at it here. And you can see Keen has said, yep, all right. He's bailed off of it, going to save the tires a little bit. As that Paul Miller racing machine goes by him here, he's going to follow him in. The Paul Miller car is going to stay out and complete this lap But I think Keane has said, well, that's what we got.
So Keane hits the pit lane, and qualifying round number 1 for the GTD cars is complete. And Leah Keane in the WeatherTech Alex Job Racing number 22, tip of the cap to that team. They have won the Total pole in GT Daytona.
Yep, that was Bryce Miller in that Paul Miller Racing car that came by. There's a look at the man right now, Lee Keane. He and Spencer have really been something in qualifying. There's Cooper McNeil coming over, giving him a big thanks and a big congratulations. And boy, I'll tell you what Cooper McNeil and Bleekemolen did at Le Mans, running that 24-hour enduro, just the two of them, after Brett Curtis had a crash and wasn't cleared to race, after the crew had to rebuild the car. The third driver that they then drafted in, the ACO said, nope, can't do it. You didn't run any night laps. So one, they had to run that race with just the two of them, and two, because they didn't have two non-professional drivers in the car, they had to move up into the pro category, and all they did, after 24 hours of racing, Cooper McNeil, along with Joe Bleekemolen there, ended up 5th in LMGTE Pro. That was staggering. Now they come here and they bring Lee Keane back into the WeatherTech Porsche, and pow, on pole, and not only on pole, the Total Pole Award. That's pretty cool. Buster, we're green, and watch the explosion here from the cars as they come out. They make the run. Everybody actually being pretty calm in their launch here. One of the Ferraris, one of the Vipers makes the move. Oftentimes you just see everybody just go bow and just launch onto the track. But I think we've got some guys not playing games here, but playing the game and basically saying, we're going to wait a little bit. We're going to make sure we've got a gap out there to really do something. There goes one of the Corvettes. Here comes the number 4 Corvette as it makes its launch. And boy, that took the luster out of my watch the explosion here, and then a couple of cars just kind of ease out onto the track. It's usually you see them, they just go for it. But right now I think they know they've got room on this track. Gap yourself a little bit, give yourself room, and get ready to put on one heck of a show.
Well, it becomes a sign of the level of competition that is in the GT Le Mans category, because you got to take every advantage in the strategy. In this case, the Corvettes said, all right, we're going to hold off a little bit. We're going to come out a little bit later. The Ferrari went out first. One of the Vipers went out early on, and then the rest are just kind of waiting to get that space on the racetrack so they can lay down a solid lap and be competitive here in qualifying. Leah Keane laid down the lap for the Porsche 911 GT America in GT Daytona. We're about to set to see our second pole winner here after this 15-minute session, and we know the story. It has been Prio who has been so quick in that BMW, but the Chevrolets going to try to hunt him down with Jan Magnussen behind the wheel of that yellow number 3. That's been the faster of the 2 Corvettes this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see. And of course, the Corvette guys did run at Le Mans. The number 3 car, I mean, they had a real legitimate shot at the win. Then they had a fluky deal where the air nozzle, where it attaches to the car for the air jacks, the ACO mandated part that you have to run broke. And so they had to completely fix it. Cost them dearly, and they thought, we're done, we're out of it, and ended up right back on the podium when other cars and teams had unique problems. And that's part of endurance racing, is just staying after it, and they did. But that car, this new Corvette, has already shown its prowess. It's got wins this year in the championship earlier in the season. It's going to be good. And you know, we're on board right now, if you're watching with us at IMSA.com. The number 56 BMW, that is the team car to the one of Andy Prio. That has been an awfully effective machine out there. But the first car out that's going to throw up the first time should be the number 62 Risi Competizione Ferrari. There it is. And it is interesting driver lineup here. Giancarlo Fisichella, 221, I think, Formula One starts, has never raced here at the Glen. He said he fell in love with this place before he even got on the track. And he said, then I drove it and went, oh my, why haven't I been here before? And Pierre Kaffer, also an awfully talented driver, is his co-driver here this weekend. So that's going to be the first car that is going to set a real representative time, but then they're going to come fast and furious.
And it is Pierre who is qualifying this number 62 Ferrari for Risi Competizione here in this opening session, making his way down into turn number 7, that downhill sweeping corner that then as you accelerate back up through, it starts pitching to the right and uphill at that section of the boot. A very tricky and technical part of this racetrack as we begin to determine who will be the fastest. He's coming around in just a moment. We're going to see what kind of lap Pierre can lay down.
And it's interesting here. You've got this car, the 62 Risi Competizione car, and the 57 Krone Racing Ferrari are the two independent teams that are running. They get good assistance through Ferrari's GT company, if you will, called Michelotto, that does an awful lot of work on these cars, but they're not full-out factory efforts like the other cars out there. And yet this Risi equip over the years has been able to win some awfully key races and championships. Here comes Koffer. This should be his first complete flyer. And what does he do? A 1 minute 47.142 and goes to the top. Once again, that's about 3 seconds off where we expect these guys to be. And let's watch what happens here as the two Corvettes tee it up. Jan Magnussen wheeling out of turn 11 and onto the front straight. 146.3 by Dominic Farnbacher had jumped to the top. Milner goes to a 146.5. Brian Sellers a 145.7. That's our first 145 lap in the Falcon Tires car. Magnussen was just tootling around on that one. He's waiting for one more lap to really go after it here. He had a 149.
So the strategy being played out, the 911 car, the combination of Nick Tandy, Richard Leeds, and Patrick Pilet have taken the shortcut on the course, so will not get a time. That's a Porsche North America car that opened up with a win at the Rolex 24 at the beginning of the year. Will not get a time on this circuit.
Oh, we got a report now that the 6.2 did the same thing. And so what happens, you just lose that lap, essentially, obviously. Dirk Mueller, though, has now gone to a 145.664, the number 56. Rahal Letterman Lanigan, Crown Plaza BMW, that's the Z4 GTE, and has gone to the top. Sellers in second in the Falcon Tires Porsche. Milner in the number 4 Corvette third. Koffer fourth in the Risi car. And then you have to go down to Richard Leeds in that number 911. 911 RSR is fifth right now in the category. Now they come by. Dominic Farnbacher, a 145.445 in the number 91 Dodge Viper SRT. Onto the front straight comes the number 3 Corvette. Let's see what Mags does this time by. A 145.359 by Magnussen, but he's eclipsed by his teammate Tommy Milner in the number 4 Corvette, a 145.1. And Brian Sellers comes by again in the Falcon Tires Porsche 911 RSR at a 145.134. The number 17 machine back on top once again.
But the fast car on track throughout the practice sessions has been Andy Prio, and he has not taken a time lap. Right now, he's just headed down into the boot in that number 55, the BMW Rahal Letterman Lanigan entry. It's that black BMW circulating down through the boot. Car number 55, that's the car that we got to keep an eye on. Now out through the boot into turn number 10, high-speed left-hander. This could make the board move on this timed lap. Let's see what Prio has to offer.
His teammate Dirk Mueller just went to the point at a 44.6. Could Prio better that? He crosses the line. Not quite. I think this will be the lap he's going to go after here. That may have been his establishing lap, basically to really make sure he had the heat and the tires in the lot. But a huge lap, obviously. And suddenly that time by Dirk Mueller goes away. So I wonder if maybe there was a shortcut on the track at that one. Because he'd gone, it showed as a 144. And now that's been backed out of the timing monitor. And he's at a 145.6. So maybe we missed a call on a shortcut. And what happens, like I said, you just lose the lap. So it's still Farnbacher's 144.7. Dominic Farnbacher now at a 144.7. First into the 144s with Sellers still sitting second.
Jonathan Bomarito was working it into the boot, into turn number 8, got caught up with Tracy Krone's team in that Krone Racing Ferrari. And it slowed him up on the lap a little bit because that's pretty important Jonathan Bomarito 5th overall, and Farnbacher continuing to lead in the Viper, the team car at number 91.
And Mags just turns the best lap for him at a 1:44.8, and that slots him into second. Tommy Milner goes 1:44.9, puts him up into third. Here comes Bomarito in the 93, but like you said, got held up just a little bit. Still turns a 1:44.892, jumps to fourth, pushes Sellers back into fifth. Good run.
And here comes the 56 back across the line, and Dirk Mueller able to go a 1:44.4. The team car, the 55 of Andy Prio, now coming back onto the main straightaway again. Let's see if he could stop the stopwatch even faster across the line. Second quick, and so the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan BMWs 1-2.
Separated by 6/7 of a second. It's that close. And these BMWs, like I said, because you've got these long corners, and even up to the S's, it's long, change of direction, but you're still in it for a while. Into the boot, that whole section down there, these long corners, these cars make good downforce, and that's key in these long corners on the track. They might give it up a little bit in outright straight line speed, but they carry that speed through the corners. Now, speaking of carrying speed through a corner, here comes Magnussen. Michael Christensen jumps to fourth in the 912 Porsche. And here comes Magnussen. He's got a better at 1:44.4. Doesn't quite do it. A 1:44.7, still third. Milner has shown an ability to throw him down too. He does not improve. So it's Mueller, Prio, Magnussen, Farnbacher, and Christensen, the young gun in the 912 factory Porsche 911 RSR.
Now the other 911 is down there in the 13th spot overall. Remember, Tandy and that group did have that shortcut on the course, so we haven't really seen what that car can do. So we'll see if the other Porsche North America car number 911 can improve on the scoring pylon and pick up the pace a little.
We just got a report they had a shortcut, and that their lap is off. So they're struggling. They're way down in the order right now. I mean, they're 13th overall behind some of the GT Daytona cars. By the way, Jonathan Bomarito in that clear lap has just got a 1:44.6 for third. And let's see, Andy Prio, a 1:44 flat, a 1:44.084. Mueller had just turned to 1:44.3, and then Prio just said, nah, we're going to flatten that curve out, a 1:44 not. Wow, what a lap. Bomarito still sits third, Magnussen fourth, and the 91 Viper sits in the fifth spot with Christensen, Milner, Kaffer, Sellers down to the top nine. Then you've got some of the GT Daytona cars down to then you go to 13th overall, 10th in GTLM, the 911, Tandy Leitz Pilet Porsche.
2 BMW, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan among the top 2. You've got 2 cars in the top 5 for SRT Motorsports and the Vipers. And then you've got one of the Porsches with Michael Christensen behind the wheel, now number 3 in that 912.
Yeah, nice lap by him and Magnussen getting around Jonathan Bomarito as well. Christensen at a 44.48, Mags at a 44.59. But that 1:44 flat by Prio, that's 3/10 clear, almost 4/10 clear of everybody. That one's going to be tough to overcome here, but you know they're going to go for it. And here we go, down into the last turn. 93, Jonathan Bomarito, the bomber they call him, and he is something. He is one of the quickest drivers in this series, bar none, folks. Let's see what he's able to do. See if the car is up to it. And nope, doesn't quite get it done at this stage. Watching now, that number 912 in the hands of Michael Christensen at a 1:44.482, currently third. This is the guy that pulled out a unbelievable lap in qualifying for the Sebring 12 Hours to earn his first pole in the championship, first pole as a Porsche factory driver in global, and certainly include this, global GTLM racing.
Christensen has been among the top 3 fastest cars throughout the race weekend. And would love to be able to improve. You know, it's not that far out of reach to get that second spot. Only 1/10 of a second separating second and third. The Dick Mueller GTLM car, Dirk Mueller, and the 912 here of Christensen as he comes around. Let's see how he stops the stopwatch here under the Sahlen Bridge and back down the main straightaway.
A 1:44.48 is what he had. And And he goes at 1:44.87. Not enough to improve that spot at this stage. So it's still Prio. Magnussen comes through, jumps to second at a 1:44.376. Wow, and by 1/1000th of a second pushes Dirk Mueller back to third.
Mueller has retired for the session. His 56 is on the pit lane, along with the 55 on the pit lane as well. So we'll see if Jan Magnussen continues around the circuit to maybe get one more lap in, knowing that he is, what, 3/10, closer to 2/10 of a second off the pole position right now. We'll see how aggressive he is on this final circuit around.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, that's for sure. That's a chunk, as we have 1 minute left in this session. That's a chunk to make up here. Good second place, though. It pushes Mueller to third, Christensen to fourth, Bomarito back into fifth. And Mags is, he's still out. I think Christensen might be out, too. I don't know if he's on a flyer or not. Mags looks like he's up on the wheel just a little bit. The car that's a bit of a surprise here is Richard Lietz in that 911. A couple of course cuts and everything, which tells you that maybe they've just missed the setup, the handling's off, and he was trying to pick it up and carry it a little bit and just not able to do it. Here comes Christensen. You know what? He might just come underneath and get to the checker before time runs out here. And is 10 seconds remaining in this session. And he does it. If he wants it, he can do one more lap. He didn't improve on this one either. He had a 44.7 on this lap. A 44.4 was his best. And I think Mags has said, nah, we're done. Yep, he's peeling it in. So really the only guy with a shot. Now here comes the 911. This is a huge lap for them. They need to do something and move up, and they do. They go from 13th overall to 10th overall, and at least now have cleared all of the GT Daytona cars. Still a 1:45.2 for Richard Lietz, and that's going to be very disappointing for them, especially when a 1:44.4 for Christensen in the team car has them a lot farther up the order. So really, I think, Joe, the guy we're watching, that is Michael Christensen in that 912 Porsche 911 RSR. He's the only guy that's got a shot at it. It looks like he's still staying on it a bit.
Yeah, he certainly is. One more car will also come around, is that Ferrari for Tracy Krohn. Krohn back right now in the 17th position overall, and the final position in class in GTLM. Does pick up a spot, is now 16th overall. Still has, what, 5 GTD cars in front of Tracy Krohn, but we'll keep an eye on the 912 circulating around the racetrack, and Michael Christensen to see if he can navigate around. One other car coming around is going to be that 62 at a couple of times disallowed in that Ferrari F458 Italia.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, but he's going to head to the pits. And I saw coming through the inner loop, suddenly Christensen just got off the throttle. The predictive, obviously, that the team has and that he's got on his dash pretty clearly indicated, apparently, that it wasn't on, and he was just going to tear up the tires and not get much for it. And you've got to have that discipline to go, okay, we'll just back out of it then. And that's exactly what he has done. So at this point, it is nobody really out there at this stage that's on any kind of a flyer. So Andy Prio, boy, what a lap. A 1:44.084 for the driver in that black BMW from Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, that BMW Z4 GTE. That was a wicked quick lap by 0.3 of a second on pole. And late in the going, Jan Magnussen, the number 3 the number 3 Chevrolet Corvette C7R, was able to split the 2 BMWs, prevent a BMW sweep of the front row. Dirk Mueller, the team number 56 Crown Plaza BMW, sits third. The 912 Porsche 911 RSR of Michael Christensen will go fourth. Fifth will be Jonathan Bomarito in the Pennzoil Ultra Dodge Viper SRT number 93. His teammate, they will have an all Viper row 3, Dominic Farnbacher in the number 91 Dodge Viper SRT. Then the number 4 Corvette C7R of Tommy Milner. He will be joined on that fourth row by the 62 of Pierre Coffer in the Risi Competizione Ferrari 458 Italia. As Joe said, we're sure glad you're here, and we're delighted you're joining us here at IMSA.com. As we're getting word from Race Control that the starter is ready, and the green flag is shown. Prototype challenge machines heading out onto the track. And unfortunately, Joe, there's a couple that most likely will not be making it. Early in that preceding practice session, we had an accident right at the exit of turn 10 as one of the cars pulled out after a spin right onto the hot track and got clouded by another of the cars. There's no way either of those cars are going to be able to be turned around and on track that fast. So we'll have a couple of less cars than we would have wanted, but believe me, these cars, as I said, basically a spec chassis, which means in the hands of some of these brilliant drivers, they put on a spectacular show. Well, folks, here's a look at it here on the web. We were talking about it. Here's what happened. Alex Tagliani spun and then just for some reason rejoined right at the exit of turn number 10 with a throng of cars coming through, and no place for Chris Miller to go in that JDC driver's suit there. You can see he's also the team principal. So aside from a potential hit in terms of the damage on the car, it was a monster hit to the pocketbook as well.
Yeah, it certainly was, and certainly dampened the spirits on those teams. We'll have to follow up on the story as the weekend goes on to see if at all they'll be able to get a car put back together to go racing tomorrow. But it certainly took two of the contenders out of the prototype challenge division. But nonetheless, qualifying goes on, and we are already rolling on. The Bar 1 Motorsports car is one of the first cars to be able to lead out onto the racetrack in car number 88, and that's one of the cars that we'll see where they stack up here in the timing order once they come around at full song.
As we talked about, if you're not familiar with the prototype challenge class, it is an Orica chassis. They are all running an identical chassis, and it really it's a chassis that was evolved and developed from a very good LMP2 category chassis from a few years ago. Very good aerodynamics on the car, lots of good stick, and just to make it interesting, they replumbed these cars, and they've got an LS3, basically the LS3 Corvette engine in the back, so a V8 with lots of good power and torque, with a good aerodynamic package, some great drivers, and it is all spec. You cannot go and spend a ton of money on a motor program, on a wind tunnel program. That's the whole idea. It keeps the costs in check and allows teams to get involved in the sport, get out there with some pretty substantial performance. And we were talking about in that practice right before here, I mean, these cars were less than 3 seconds off the pace of the top prototypes. I mean, that's some serious pace.
Now the 09 car has come down the pit lane into his pit stall and heads back out onto the racetrack. That's the other RSR racing entry.
That's Bruno Junqueira, who he's been the one guy who regularly has been able to put up a real fight and sometimes steal a few poles from Colin Brown in this championship. And I mean, Bruno Junqueira, if you followed racing over the years, he was an absolute rocket in the kart and Champ Car IndyCar series, so not a big surprise there. And yeah, it was interesting. He came in, it looked like he was having a fairly animated discussion with one of the crew guys, both on the radio and the guy talking to him directly down into the cockpit. So not exactly sure what that was about, but Bruno just back on track and away we go.
Well, the 25 in the 8-star Motorsports camp by Tom Kimmer-Smith has been lightning fast all weekend long, and he is working up through turn 9 into turn 10 now. To be curious to see where that 25 stacks up, because that's going to be one of the laps that we'll keep an eye on. Some of the times already coming in. Martin Plowman behind the wheel of that number 88. Now David Estella becomes number 1 in a 38. Now we start to see, and here's that 25 coming across now for Tom Kimmer-Smith. We'll see where he stacks up for qualifying. He goes to number 1 at a 143.333 and already sets the bar at a pretty high standard.
Yeah, he does. He is something else in these cars. He's had a lot of success, 2-time Le Mans winner in both GT and LMP2 category, so he understands these prototypes to be sure. A guy to watch, though, is that number 88 you were alluding to, the Bar 1 Motorsports car. Martin Plowman is a guy who's got a tremendous amount of speed. He was a former, I believe, Indy Lights front runner, has done some IndyCar racing, also has been very quick in the European and the European Le Mans Series, the World Endurance Championship in the LMP2 cars. So Martin Plowman might just be able to surprise here. Be interesting to see. On screen right now, we're watching Gunnar Jeanette in that PR1 Matheson Motorsports, the Camp Boggy Creek car that he shares with Frankie Montecalvo, as he's working up through the S's. There is a look at the number 80 of Martin Plowman. And we'll see here now, these next couple of laps are going to be the laps that are really, I think, going to be the ones with the pace. These cars, they've, as we said, good power, good downforce, so they will build the heat in these Continental tires. And these cars, more than the other two categories here, have run the last, now this year and the previous year, on the Continental tires. So they've got these tires really well sorted. All right, Martin Plowman goes to the top at a 1 minute 43.273 and pushes Kimber Smith back a spot. But again, we have seen a 41 in these cars earlier today, so we expect to see, I think we're certainly going to get down, and there it is. Kimber Smith responds with a 1 minute 42.3 and jumps right back to the top of the order.
Kimber Smith will be co-driving with Aaron Lux and Sean Rahal as the weekend progresses with the 3-driver lineup for that number 25 8-Star Motorsports team. Still yet to see the 54 team come out and lay down a lap.
Here comes Renger van de Zende in that Starworks Martini liveried machine, who had the fastest lap this morning. Jumps to second at a 1:42.717 for Renger van de Zende. Third now goes John Martin, who's in the number 7 car. That is the team entry from Starworks. And interestingly, he's replacing one of the regular drivers in that car, Sam Bird, the European driver who had a conflict here. Here comes now the Core Autosport Flexbox machine. Colin Brown, as we've talked about before, he just finds it, man. A 1 minute 42.103 for Colin Brown.
Yeah, he just finds a way to get it done, and I think he's got some more in that number 54 Core Autosport team, already climbing the hill back through the S's. Making its way back around is that number 88 for Martin Plowman, trying to pick up some pace here into turn number 11. That right-hander swinging back up towards the start-finish line. The Bar 1 Motorsports entry to the stripe, currently shown in the 6th position, and does not improve here on that lap.
Interesting. Yeah, runs a 42.9, but not enough here.
Kimber Smith coming back around in the Starworks 25, trying to knock Colin Brown down the ladder, and he does. Into the 41s, 141.9, about a 1/10.5 better than Colin Brown.
That was a great lap. Now the question is, who's got an answer for that? As we're watching Kimber Smith work his way up through the S's, boy, that is just a full chat blast run right up through that tricky sequence. No runoff area there. You thread the needle up through there. Now we're watching Colin Brown as he makes his way up and out of turn 9, the heel of the boot, up into turn 10, feeds it into that left-hander, rolls into the throttle. No traction control on these cars, so a little bit of a skip there, just a quick correction, never lift, keep feeding it power. Now into the wicked quick turn 10 as he comes blasting down, setting up now for turn 11. Renger van de Zende, while we were watching that, has gone a 141.7. Here comes Colin Brown. What happens? Does he take it back? He does! A 141.125. It's only 0.6 of a second. That was an amazing lap by Colin Brown. Renger van de Zende second. John Martin turned another good lap up into third. Tom Kimber Smith fourth. And Gunnar Jeanette sits in fifth. But Colin Brown now by 0.6 of a second. That is a huge gap by this class's standards. Staggering stuff.
Just an incredible talent is Colin Brown. Renger van der Zende now in the 2nd spot. John Martin holding on to 3rd. Tom Kimber Smith, 8-Star Motorsport entry, has been bumped back to 4th. Gunnar Jeanette now in the 5th position. But here comes a 25. Tom Kimber Smith. He bumped Colin Brown before. Can he do it again? Off turn number 11 and back down to stop the watch here along the front straightaway. Kimber Smith flashes beneath the flag stand and jumps up to the number 2 spot. 141.7, but still some 5.5 tenths behind current leader Colin Brown.
We just saw that car, the number 8 of Renger van de Zende, run wide coming through the heel of the boot, and they actually had that left side of the car step off track. Big moment. Gathered it up and saved it, but obviously that lap is gone, so now I think he's just kind of straightening it out and is now going to begin another one. But he was certainly pushing immensely hard. Here you can see another look at it here, down into the heel. It's turn 8, just a little bit too hot, floats it wide, can't keep it even onto those curves. and it stepped out for just a second, but you know, easy hands on the wheel, let it sort itself out, then went back after it. And now let's see if Colin Brown is able to get wet. If he improves, we're going to be down on the 140s, folks. That's going to be amazingly fast.
And Colin Brown driving that number 54. It's a white, orange, and blue colored chassis out on the racetrack. Colin Brown lays down a lap. That one not as fast as he eased it around about 154. So he had backed off quite a bit, knowing that he's got just about 5.5 tenths over the rest of the field right now, and Tom Kimmer-Smith, who's working it back around here through turn number 9.
When you've got that kind of a margin, you'll slow down and just tootle around enough to keep the heat in the tires, just in case somebody surprises you, and then you can attack again in a big hurry. Is Tom Kimmer-Smith out of turn number 11. You can see these guys don't get up near, quite as far over those curves as he does. A 141.013. Well, I didn't think he could get much underneath the 141.125 and stay in the 141s. But Kimmer-Smith, a 1 minute 41.013. Folks, that is an average speed of 121.17 miles an hour around here. That is wicked quick. Now, here comes Renger van der Zande this lap. He has been on it all the way. He goes right to the wall, as close as you can get. What kind of a lap does he pull out here? He goes to second, a 1 minute 41.018. We're talking 5/1000ths of a second, Joe. And then Colin Brown now sits in third. This is incredible stuff.
5/1000ths of a second makes it seem more like we're at a drag strip than a road course. Unbelievably close. Over the course of 3.4 miles and 11 turns, only 5/1000ths. But here comes Colin Brown. He's starting to get that car back up to speed. He knows that he's now back in the third spot. He's got to try to go after those 2 Star Works cars.
Guess what? We have our first 1 minute 40 lap. A 1 minute 40.876 by Colin Brown. Jumps back to the top. Kimmer-Smith sits second. Van der Zande is third. Martin is fourth. Gunnar Jeanette is fifth.
What a qualifying round this has been. And the 25 of Tom Kimmer-Smith is easing it down here into turn number 10. What a round. Entertaining. Brown, Kimmer-Smith, and Renger van der Zande swapping among the top 3 throughout this session with 2.5 minutes remaining.
Yeah, it looks like Tom Kimmer-Smith has not given up on it. He wasn't really on pace that lap, but now he has started to really launch a flyer here, I think, up and over the curbs, down at the exit of the 90, feeding it into the S's in that run up this hill here. Right now, the gap is 0.137. So basically 13/100ths of a second is what he has got to find if he is going to get around Colin Brown, who we are watching right now.
I mean, this has really come to the likeness of a game of horse. I'll go better. No, I can go better than that. No, wait, no, me. And that's the way it's been. And now Colin Brown trying to say, hey, I know these guys are going after my top speed right now. I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive here, rolling on down through turn number 10. We know that 25 of Kimmer-Smith is on a lap, so Colin Brown wants to see if he can improve his time because Kimmer-Smith is behind Brown on the racetrack. Here is Colin Brown down the main straightaway. Let's see what he turns.
A minute 30 left in the session, by the way, so this will be the last lap. Well, he improved his time, didn't he, to a 140.773. The margin now 0.24, so he stretched it out just a little bit.
But here comes Kimmer-Smith. Turn 9. He's through that turn clean. On the accelerator, banks it left into turn number 10. Down the short straightaway, orange 25. Star Works, 1 minute left to go. Kimmer-Smith, hammer down on the long front straightaway. Can he challenge Colin Brown? And he cannot, surprisingly. Wow. Looked like he was on a good lap. Yeah. 141.1. Not as quick as a lap that he ran earlier. A 141.0.
The amazing thing to me is that Bruno Junqueira is outside of the top 5. I really would have thought we were going to see him right smack dab in it. Now let's watch Renger van der Zande out of the final turn, the number 8 Star Works car. Can he do it? He gumps up into second spot. He's the only other guy into the 140s right now at a 1 minute 40.955. And the margin now is 18 100ths of a second from Colin Brown to Renger van der Zande, then Kimber Smith third, Martin fourth, Gunnar Jeanette fifth. So this is going to be fascinating because here comes Colin Brown and Renger van der Zande and Tom Kimber Smith both have laps that are good. They're alive. I've never seen Colin Brown get that close to the wall this entire session. Does it change? It does! A rocket quick 1 minute 40.562 second lap, and the margin balloons up to almost 4/10 of a second. Where does he find this stuff? Well, like I said, I'd never seen him get near that close to that wall as he did on that last lap. That was the one he threw everything at it.
Well, it reminds me of the lap that we saw Andy Lally turn early on in the session in that Porsche, because he was wide coming off a 9, he was wide coming off 11, and it was fast. Here comes Tom Kimber Smith. Can he better his teammate and Colin Brown, currently third, needs to be in the 140s, and he does. 140.8. Not giving enough to get Colin Brown, but he'll be number 2 as Renger van der Zande now still has an opportunity to swing around, but he is going to ease out of it, and it's going to be Colin Brown who's going to win the pole.
Yeah, wow, what a session. And Renger van der Zande, obviously, you know, as we said, they have in these cars what they call predictives. And of course, they've also got the data that the crew has, and they're saying it's not going to happen. You know, so don't eat up these tires, just bring it home. But Gunnar Jeanette wants to try and do something yet, maybe get out of that 5th spot. He's been kind of mired in here. He improves his time, goes to a 1 minute 41.5, but the problem is that didn't improve the position, and it's still a second off of Colin Brown's time. That was just an amazing lap, and Tom Kimber Smith really pulled one out as well, as did Renger van der Zande, into the 1 minute 40s, a 140.5. And folks, let's put that in perspective. In that the fast practice session from this morning, the fastest prototype time was a 1:39.5. He got within a second of the fastest prototype time we have seen yet today. Now, we know we're going to be probably into the 38s, certainly low 38s for these prototypes, I would imagine, but still, that gives you an idea of the performance potential of these prototype challenge cars. And Colin Brown himself, that was remarkable.
Well, that and the weather really starting to play a positive role here as the day goes on, because we're getting to the prototype qualifying coming up, and a big thumbs up out of Colin Brown as he's pulled that car down to the pit lane, number 54. And he climbs out, ladies and gentlemen. If you're on the front straightaway here, give him a big round of applause, because he's a wheelman and put on a show for us here today to be able to secure that pole in what has been a very interesting and exciting qualifying round.
We're less than a minute from the start of our final group, the prototype machines themselves. What are we going to see for times in this one? Certainly 138s, maybe a 137?
Well, Action Express led the final practice. João Barbosa laying down the quick time, but the combination of Scott Sharp and Ryan Diel have been very, very quick in those Hondas for Extreme Speed Motorsports. You can't count out Richard Westbrook and Michael Valiente in the Spirit of Daytona. They were the top 3 in our final practice session, so a good mix of different talent, but it seems as though the Extreme Speed Motorsports team has maybe a bit of an edge, even though they weren't fastest in that last practice, because Barbosa late in the session went a 139.6, while the Extreme Speed team 140.0 in their final practice session. So this is going to be interesting. I think we're going to see a duplicate of what we just saw in Prototype Challenge, back and forth, where a lot of different lead changes here as the green flag is out, and they are smoking the tires and lighting the hides here on the pit lane.
See, now that's what I meant when I was trying to tee up the GTLM thing, was they're just going to explode.
That's all right. You're just a little bit early.
Okay.
We saw it there.
Right. Timing is everything.
The Delta Wing is going to be first on track, and we would assume that that's Catherine Legg behind the wheel. She's been piloting that car most of the weekend throughout practice.
Yeah, and that is such a unique machine. You know, I saw something at the Petit Le Mans last year that the only car that could make that work was the Delta Wing. As they came up through turn 3 and the S's that you weave down through 4 up into turn 5 at Road Atlanta, very tricky, tight piece of racetrack. And at one point, Catherine was coming up on the back of one of the GT cars and got the long snout of that Delta Wing down the inside in the S's, and there was enough room for a delta wing nose and a couple of sheets of paper. No other car could have done that. She just stayed tucked right in there. I'm sure the guy in that GT car was, you know, in the mirror going, what is going on here? And they just ran it on down. It worked beautifully.
Now here's part of the strategy of this session, because all of the teams have left the pit lane with the exception of the Action Express team, which is now just departed pit road, and they've got a lot of racing room in front of them, a clear racetrack. It'll be the 5 car Barbosa first, and the 9 car, the Purcell team, will be the second car to come out on track, and those 2 team cars appear to want to run together on the racetrack for qualifying.
It's all about that gap, isn't it? Make sure that 1, you've got clear track, and 2 here, you know, if you can team up a little bit, even if, you know, in the prototypes, you can benefit from a little bit of a tow. So why not see how that's going to work? We're on board now with the number 60 of Oz Negri. That is the Mike Shank. That's the Dunn Tire and Curb Records machine onto the front straight. And Oz Negri has been brilliant in qualifying. Well, he's always brilliant, no matter what. He's done some amazing things in the races as well. But his raw pace, you know, he is just an exceptionally talented driver. And he's got clear track right now. He got around Captain Legg, and so he's got a nice clear piece of road, and he is going to attack right now.
That, of course, is the Ford twin-turbo direct injected EcoBoost engine in that Michael Shank number 60 for Oz Negri as he hits the back straightaway.
Good onboard ride here, folks, with you at IMSA.com. That's the inner loop. Now out, this is the long, high-speed turn 5. If you continue bending, that's the chute that takes you down to the short course, right over into what would be turn 11. Now you're heading down into what they call the laces of the boot. That's turn number 6. And here's the toe. Climbing corner, tricky little piece of real estate, this.
Really is, because that's the spot where you're turning right uphill. You power up through that uphill section of the racetrack, and then you're downhill for that hard braking right-hand turn, turn number 8, that is really provided this weekend in all the different divisions. Quite a challenge. But then once you get through there, downhill, uphill again, back to turn 9, and it's pretty much wide open from there, right on back to the start-finish line to complete your lap.
Yeah, turn 8's really tricky for 2 reasons. One, as you turn in, you're falling away, so it's off camber, you've got no help from gravity on your braking, and you've got to just go in with confidence, wait till you pick up that little bit of uphill. Then you're up into turn 9. That right as you want that bit of grip, it flattens out as you join the main track. Here we go, Oz Negri completing the lap. He'll be the first who should flash up near the top at a 1:41.3, and this next lap really should be the flyer for him. I think we're going to see a eye-opening scenario here where these guys end up relating to that time of Colin Brown. Alex Brundle now in the Morgan Nissan from Oak Racing jumps to the top of the prototype. He's still second overall with a 1:40.793. As we said, that Oak Racing Morgan Nissan, along with the 2 HVD cars from the Tequila Patron Extreme Speed Motorsports team, they're going to be very, very good here.
And it's fun to listen to the different sounds around the racetrack as well. You can hear the Fords, a little bit of a higher pitch sound. The Chevrolet got that more bassy sound to their engines as they come swinging by you. You'll notice that. Also the 01 out on track, the Ganassi car, was quick in the session for a while. Scott Pruitt behind the wheel, currently 4th fastest overall, 2nd in the session behind Alex Brundle. But again, this next lap is going to be the lap that will count as riding on board for the online stream folks with the Oak Racing machine for Alex Brundle.
Yep, son of the Formula 1 driver Martin Brundle. He's the test and development driver for Onroc, which is the manufacturing arm for Oak Racing that builds these chassis and has built that new Ligier chassis. Look at that car dancing on the brakes as he is going after it in every possible way he can. And again, these cars, they just make wonderful amounts of downforce that gives you immense stick. You can brake so deep with downforce like that, and you can carry speed through the corners, so you brake really, really late, breathe out of it, let it flow through the corner. That's turn number 10. Here's turn number 11. As Oswaldo Negri has gone to the top at a 1:40.3, but here comes Brundle, and what's he gonna do? Scott Sharp has gone to a 1:40.323, and Brundle a 1:39.617 for Alex Brundle, and he's chased across the line at a 1:39.691 by Michael Valiante in the spirit of Daytona. Visit Florida Corvette DP. And that didn't last long. Taylor's right there at a 1:39.6.
It is Ricky Taylor that's qualifying today in the 10. and he is now number 2. Valiente in the Spirit of Daytona bumped down to 3. Scott Pruitt now in the 3rd spot. Scott Sharp, Extreme Speed Motorsports team, that rounds out the top 5. The Mazdas are out on track as well, trying to pick up the pace. That's that diesel-powered engine. We've got one of the Extreme Speed Motorsports cars making its way into turn number 10 here. That could be one of the stories because they have been lightning quick in practice throughout the weekend.
Yeah, they have. I mean, Scott Sharp just threw down a great lap, but we've seen as well that Johannes van Overbeek has been awfully impressive in those machines as well. And we'll see where everything slots out here. Johannes van Overbeek up into 5th now at a 39.9. And Christian Fittipaldi goes by at a 39.176. A 1 minute 39.176 for the number 5 Action Express Racing team, currently leading in the Tequila Patron North American Endurance Cup, as well as being right up near the sharp end of things in the overall points for the Tudor United Sports Car Championship. At 39.1 now, that's about 4/10 clear of the field, but I think there's more in it yet from a number of these machines.
Oh, one of the cars coming back this direction is the Spirit of Daytona. Christian Fittipaldi 1, Alex Brundle now number 1, Scott Sharp is 3. Here comes the Spirit of Daytona for Michael Valiente across the stripe. Will he be able to improve? Not that time around. He goes at 140.6. So right now, Brundle number 1, Fittipaldi now 2, and Wayne Taylor Racing driver Ricky Taylor has now put it in the top 3.
The story, I think, is the time that Brundle just put in, a 1 minute 38.566. Now he is 6/10 clear of Christian Fittipaldi, with Pruitt 3rd now. Just jumped up there to 39.3, then Ricky Taylor at a 39.4. That's a 4.4. And then Scott Sharp at a 39.45. That is your top 5. Valiante is 6th. Johannes van Overbeek 7th. Oz Negri is in 8th. John Fogerty doing the qualifying in the number 9 car. And then in the 10th spot overall, it remains Colin Brown right now. And this is going to be pretty fun to see just what's going to happen next, because here comes Christian Fittipaldi onto the front straight. Johannes van Overbeek has just jumped into 2nd, but Fittipaldi takes it back. The only other car to go into the 38s at a 38.8 compared to Brundle's 38.5. But Van Overbeek had just turned to 39.1. That's now good for 3rd.
And it's what we saw happen in the Prototype Challenge qualifying session. Brundle now setting the bar to 138.5. 3/10 in hand back to Christian Fittipaldi, leapfrogging back and forth for position, but so far Brundle has had the fastest car on track. How about Johannes van Overbeek, who's working into turn number 5 in the Tequila Patron number 2, that green and black open cockpit automobile now swinging into the left-hander of turn number 6 is a car that we'll have to keep an eye on, because number 3 right now. And how about Christian Fittipaldi up to 2, and Valiente has now put that Spirit of Daytona back inside the top 3.
Oh, he has, and Ricky Taylor just jumps back up into 4th. So Johannes now finds himself in 5th. And Johannes is coming up on the back of one of those Sky Active Mazdas. And again, those cars still in their development phase, not quite as quick as some of these other cars. And Johannes, if he's on an absolute flyer here, he's going to hope, obviously, that that machine up in front of him sees him coming and lets him flow through. We'll see what happens here. This is now turn number 10 as he's feeding it through, coming up now into turn number 11. Well, this might time out okay. He hasn't run up on the back of him, and he may have been able to get a little bit of a toe. Let's see what he turns for a time. Not quite enough. He does not improve. So we have 5 minutes left in this session. Brundle, Fittipaldi, Valiente, Taylor, Johannes van Overbeek, your top 5. Scott Pruitt, Scott Sharp, John Fogerty, Oz Negri. Down to 9th, 10th in the class is Eric Kern, 15th overall though, but Eric Kern in that number 31 Whelen Engineering Corvette DP.
Well, tough lap here for the 4th place car of Ricky Taylor. Got tied up working behind the Delta Wing through the boot, and it cost a little bit of time there. Still has not been able to bypass the Delta Wing. Alex Brundle and that Nissan Morgan continuing to be the fastest on track. Just came back around one more time and goes even quicker. A 137.9, unbelievable by the Oak Racing 42.
Well, we were wondering, we knew we'd see 38s, but what do we see at 37? It's been asked and answered. A 37.9 by Alex Brundle in the number 42 Oak Racing Nissan Morgan. And now the question is, Johannes van Overbeek, Scott Sharp, they are also P2 derived cars. What are they going to be able to do? That Morgan Nissan has been well developed, and it is a car that was designed for the billiard table smooth tracks like Le Mans, where it tends to excel, in Spa, those types of tracks. Well, that is very similar in terms of attitude, if you will, to this legendary track, and clearly that car and that team is loving the Glen.
Now the question is, can the Action Express number 5 with Christian Fittipaldi challenge that lap? He's working it down into turn number 11. We'll see how this lap was. It appeared to be a pretty clean lap, no traffic out in front. Does Fittipaldi improve his time? Now, not quite, 144, so it kind of eased it around in the front section of the racetrack, and now we'll see if he picks it up the pace to go back after it. But boy, the 42 team, they hadn't slowed down at all. They're still hustling around with Alex Brundle behind the wheel.
Yeah, he just loves flogging these cars, no question. And clearly Fittipaldi, as you said, had eased off early in the lap and then was building up speed to really go after one here. Let's see, Brundle had a 37.9 last time by. Does that improve? Not quite, but a 38 flat, so he's pretty consistently. That would have been good enough for pole by a half a second. So, boy, he is just reeling off some laps here, Joe.
And he's been turning those kind of laps, so even if you think you got him covered with one, it doesn't matter. I mean, that consistency that he's been able to lay down, a 137.9, comes back and backs it up with a 138.0. So that's a pretty impressive run right there. Fittipaldi, he's on a lap, as is Valiente, and Scott Sharp in that Extreme Speed Motorsports team just came through the bus stop, and he's hustling it around this course as well, trying to improve where he stands right now, which is in the number 5 position.
Well, Johannes van Overbeek cleared that Mazda, so if he was able to stay on it for this entire lap, we'll see what he might be able to do. It might be the next one that'll actually be the really effective one for him, but as he feeds it through 11, yeah, it gives himself plenty of room to the wall, so I don't know that this is going to be a lap that's really going to be a sparkler here, but this next one has a huge chunk potential, that's for sure.
It was a pretty good lap, though, for Van Overbeek, a 139.6, but he had already turned a 139.1 the lap prior, so still a very competitive effort that time around.
Scott Sharp now has just jumped up, though, moves up into the 5th spot now. Sharp does at a 39.046, a 39.046. So it's Brundle, Fittipaldi, Valiente, and Pruitt had improved, and Sharp went right with it. That pushes Taylor back a spot.
Now Scott Pruitt now has a Ganassi 01, holding on to the 4th position, and the time's starting to tighten up a little bit there from really just 2nd, 3rd, 4th on back. But Alex Brundle, with 1 minute remaining, has the field clearly in hand, a 0.6 of a second advantage. Simply amazing.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, this car, that's an average speed, folks, now of over 125 miles an hour. Average speed. So that gives you an idea of just what these teams are running here. Catherine Legg, by the way, her best lap at 141.4. She just improves to a 141.1. So good run for her here. Looks like Christian Fittipaldi may have, I don't know if he's on it or not. It's kind of tough to tell. He's running nice and wide lines like he might be on it. Oh, yeah, I guess he's on it, man. He was pushing and got a little smoke as he just bumped that curb. Onto the front straight he goes. And he's going to be really close to make it underneath. I think he will. He'll have one more if he wants it. Doesn't quite improve. 38.8, his best lap was a 38.5.
Yeah, Brundle is just in his own zip code. Here comes
checkered flag comes out. So it's anybody's lap that made it underneath before that came out will still be good.
See if Valiente stays on it here in the Spirit of Daytona. Looks like he's easing it down into turn 11. It doesn't have a whole bunch of speed. He'll bring that car down to the pit lane. And so the best that the 90 car will do will be a 3rd place effort.
Yeah, I was going to see, it looks like we may still have Ricky Taylor out there on a flyer. It looked like he was being real aggressive and pushing hard here. And I think Fittipaldi has not given up yet. He's absolutely throwing this thing around, and a nice job there as the Extreme Speed Motorsports car was not on a flyer recognized that Christian was coming and left that nice wide line open for him to duck down underneath right about midway through the toe of the boot. That was
Fittipaldi now
Van Overbeck, by the way.
into turn 8, that right-hander. Down through the downhill and back accelerating into turn number 9. He's got one more car in front of him on track. It's one of the Mazda Sky Active teams, the 07, and I think he's going to run him down by the time he gets to turn 10, if not turn 11, and it could impact the lap by the time he brings it back around, and because of that, he'll ease into it into turn number 11, and that's going to be it for Christian Fittipaldi.
So he ducks into the pits. We're going to hop on board with Ricky Taylor in that Konica Minolta number 10 Wayne Taylor Racing Corvette DP, as he is coming up, and I think that might be the Oak Racing car. I think that Brundle has said, yeah, I'm done, I'll let you go. And Ricky goes slicing through. Get a nice side shot of Alex Brundle behind the wheel of that cockpit. Nice to see. Those are some great angles to watch here. But unless, you know, I don't know, if Taylor right now is still sitting back in the 6th spot, and I don't know that Ricky's got designs on the pole at this point, but he may have been thinking, I think he's bailed on it as well, but if he could just move up a couple of tenths or so, that would put him up a row. Sometimes that can make a big difference, but I think everybody is pretty much conceded here that the run for the pole is done, and it belongs to a guy named Brundle. So that was absolutely spectacular. And indeed, Ricky Taylor bringing the car down into the pits.
So that'll just about put a period on qualifying, and Alex Brundle and the Oak Racing Nissan Morgan going to take the pole for the running of the Sahlen 6-hour at the Glen here tomorrow. The Total Pole Award winner will be Alex Brundle, and Oak Racing get the job done. Christian Fittipaldi will start 2nd, Michael Valiente 3rd, Scott Pruitt will start in the 3rd spot, and then rounding out the top 5 starters, the Extreme Speed Motorsports of Scott Sharp and Ryan DL.
Wow, just some fascinating stuff. You know, there were, so look at the applause coming from that Oak Racing crew. They are loving this moment. I think they were looking at the tracks. They knew they had a good fighter at Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, and they got roughed up there, to be honest with you. And they were very frustrated about that one. And they looked at the schedule and looked at the layout and said, yeah, but we got one coming up that might just be our place. And boy, has it proven to be exactly that. And Alex Brundle gave that machine a ride. And as a result, the next thing he's going to be doing is heading on over and getting the Total Pole Award for the overall and prototype category here in preparation for the Sahlen's 6 Hours of the Glen.